True Story Media.
This is Coke Zero Sugar. With real Coca-Cola taste and zero sugar. Listen closely. Hear those bubbles? That's the sound of delicious real Coca-Cola taste and zero sugar. Ice cold. Ah. Coke Zero Sugar. Real Coca-Cola taste. Zero sugar.
This Friday, Crime 101 hits theaters.
What is it that you do?
I take high-value items and make them disappear.
So you're a thief.
One crime connects them all.
I'm getting close. I know it.
But only one will walk away.
I underestimated you.
Chris Hemsworth, Mark Ruffalo, Barry Keoghan, and Halle Berry.
We're good at this.
Yeah.
Crime 101, directed by Bart Layton. Rated R, under 17 on admitted without parent. Only in theaters Friday.
What was it like? Was it like regular school?
Well, that's an interesting question because I don't know what regular school is like.
Stephen Cordes is a former student at the Word of Faith Christian School in Spindale, North Carolina. The Word of Faith Fellowship has a K-12 school run by the church, where the principal is none other than the accused cult leader herself, Jane Whaley.
So I'm not going to lie, Javier, we were given a good education. Every day began with Bible class.
Bible class consisted of reciting and learning Bible verses, then taking a test on them every Friday. Not unusual for a private religious school. But at the Word of Faith Fellowship, a lot of the teachers were also part of the church leadership. And the line between the school and the church, well, it didn't really exist.
Discipline was like a core part of the school. If you go out of line, spoke without raising your hand, there was all these rules. You would go into what they called school discipleship, and that was a separate class.
And when you went to discipleship, that's like detention, I guess, right? But what was it?
Oh my God. Yeah, it's glorified detention. It's intense. And when you went to discipleship, you weren't allowed to do any schoolwork until lunchtime. So before lunchtime, you were going through your Bible, usually either by yourself or you were told to read passages. It depended. Some people get specific punishments. Like me, I had to write Psalms 119 probably 200 fucking times.
So far, pretty strict, but not that uncommon for a private religious institution. The school makes the rules, and the rules are the rules. But here is where the Word of Faith Fellowship takes a very different approach.
If a student gave to sin or had a thought or whatever, it was encouraged that immediately you would start having to use their blasting prayer.
Blasting is a screaming prayer. It's Word of Faith Fellowship's form of deliverance.
Yes, in the middle of class. All day long you would hear that screaming, different classes just breaking out into screaming prayer all day long. And then of course you heard Jane's voice at the end of the hallway when she finally started coming into the school when her grandson was there. If you didn't come in with a smile on your face, they'd start asking you, what sin did you give to? Where have you cut Jesus off? Where have you, and then if you didn't submit, then you'd get kicked out and sent to discipleship or whatever. It wasn't just a peaceful learning environment. You were always on edge because you never knew, and you could just be in the middle of a class and give the wrong answer and they'd be that's mockery or you're not speaking by the Spirit of God, and they kick you out of class.
Now, if you're a longtime listener, pretend you already know all about the Word of Faith Fellowship. I covered the church extensively in Season 3. But for those of you who are just joining us, here's a short version. Word of Faith Fellowship started out as a small church in Spindale, North Carolina, back in 1979. And over the decades, it grew into something much darker. Former members describe it as a cult led by a woman named Jane Whaley. They call her the Prophet. She controls every aspect of the members' lives, who they marry, where they work, how they raise their kids, even how they decorate their own homes. There have been allegations of physical abuse, sexual abuse, forced unpaid labor, and families being torn apart. The church runs its own school for members' kids, kindergarten through 12th grade, with about 77 students enrolled. Jane Whaley herself serves as the principal. That's where Stephen Cordes spent most of his childhood. And you won't believe who is funding this type of private education. Tax-paying citizens like me who live in the state of North Carolina. In the 25-26 school year, the state of North Carolina handed over $200,000 of taxpayer money to fund Jane Whaley's school. The year before that, the school collected $329,000. Yes, you heard right, the money meant to go to public education is being siphoned out of public schools, which are already underfunded, by the way, and into the hands of private, largely religious schools like the Word of Faith Fellowship. In 2023, North Carolina lawmakers went all in on private school vouchers. The state became one of the first to allow all private school students to be eligible for state-funded subsidies, regardless of how much they make. More than $500 million, $625 million to be exact, for the 24-25 fiscal year. I'm talking about $500 million. Money that once would have gone to fund public schools. The state is handing out cash like a rap star flicking Benjamins, and they're doing it with very little oversight. And we've seen this before. Whenever the government hands out cash at record speed, some fraudsters will find a way of abusing the system. In today's episode, we're going to learn more about Stephen Cordez's experience at the Word of Faith Fellowship School. But we're also going to discuss other private schools just like it that are receiving tens of thousands of dollars in state funding, including one school that didn't even seem to exist. I'm Javier Leiva, and this is Pretend, stories about real people pretending to be someone else. So I've been trying to simplify how I get dressed in the morning. I don't want to think about it too much, Just grab something, throw it on, and know that it's going to work. That's kind of what I love about Quince. They've got everyday essentials down. Organic cotton sweaters, polos for pretty much any occasion, lighter jackets that actually keep you warm when the weather's doing that weird in-between thing, All the basics, but they actually hold up. Here's the thing, Quince works directly with top factories and cuts down the middleman. So you're not paying for brand markups, just quality clothing that's built to last and still look good season after season. Plus, they only partner with factories that meet rigorous standards for craftsmanship and ethical production. The wool coat that I picked up is honestly holding up way better than any other coat I've bought that costs way more. It looks good, it keeps me warm, and it didn't break the bank. Refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/pretendpod for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/pretendpod. One word. Some parents choose private schools because they feel like public schools' embrace of diversity and acceptance is indoctrinating their children. Too many rainbow flags, too many pronouns, too much focus on slavery. So they pay for their children to learn in an environment that best matches their belief system. And that's fine, I guess. To each their own. But the question is, should public school money be used to pay for their private education? To understand how we got here, I talked to Chris Nordstrom, a senior policy analyst at the North Carolina Justice Center.
Tell me what the program is, how the program is sold to us, and what the program really does.
Yeah, so I guess the program is sold to folks as a way to expand choice, a way to help struggling students out of struggling public schools. But then there is sort of the reality of the program, which is much different than that.
The rosy picture is that, hey, we're giving parents and students better choice, but in reality, what is this doing for families across North Carolina?
The short answer is not much if you're a family in a public school or if you're a working class family.
Here's how it works. The state gives families a voucher, a chunk of money to pay for private school tuition. The money goes directly to the school on behalf of the family. Sounds simple enough, right? But there are problems. The tuition and fees of a private school is generally above what's provided in the voucher program. And then families take on additional costs, like transportation, stuff like that. And get this, some of those private schools who started collecting the state voucher money, they raised their tuition, essentially double dipping. Some schools raised their tuition by as much as 15%. Originally, this program was designed to help low-income families. You had to have been enrolled in public school and your family had to qualify for free or reduced lunch. But in 2023, that low-income requirement, well, that went out the window.
When the legislature sort of pulled the Band-Aid off completely and allows families with, took off the income limit. So millionaires, billionaires are now eligible to have their children's tuition at private school publicly subsidized, as well as families who are already enrolled in private school, who've already proven that they can afford private school. And so that's, where we are today, where we've had massive expansion of this program. 87% of the dollars for new vouchers are going to disproportionately wealthy families who are already had their children enrolled in private schools.
Let's say that again. 87% of new voucher money is going to families who were already going to pay for private school. That doesn't sound like expanding choice for struggling kids. It's more like a reverse Robin Hood, steal from the poor to give to the rich.
And what kind of guardrails are in place to kind of corral this program? It sounds to me like it already got out of hand from its original inception.
Yeah, so basically none. Sorry to circle back around a little bit to your last question. I mentioned, you asked, do we know if anyone's actually being helped by this? And part of the issue in North Carolina is that we don't really have any accountability. We don't have publicly available testing data to be able to compare how these students are doing in these private schools after they take a voucher.
You might be listening to this and thinking, I don't live in North Carolina. Who cares? 18 states already have universal school choice programs, either in the form of vouchers, education savings accounts, or tax credits. The North Carolina program is fairly new. So what impact have these programs had on the states who have already rolled them out?
What we know from other states that have looked into this question is that the results are horrific, that the students who accept vouchers, leave the public school system and attend a private school, tend to perform horribly when their reading and math skills are assessed.
Close your eyes. Picture in your head a private school. You're probably picturing boys and girls wearing uniforms, beautifully manicured campuses, and BMWs and Mercedes lining the carpool lines. But that's not actually the case.
The common misconception is that private schools outperform public schools, right? They educate kids better. It's actually not true.
I talked to Blair Reeves from Carolina Forward, a nonpartisan organization based here in North Carolina.
The average private school, certainly in North Carolina, is 20 kids in a church basement. The way they've constructed it here in North Carolina, the private schools, the teachers can have little or no qualifications. So there's no required teacher qualifications. They're not required to test. They don't have the test scores. The test scores they have aren't comparable to the public ones. So no one has any idea how any of this is going. And then there's no curriculum requirements. So there's a lot of private schools in the state of North Carolina that teach complete nonsense. They're teaching creationism, biblical, history or whatever. Earth is 3,000 years old, whatever it is. A bunch of them, we're teaching that dinosaurs and cavemen coexisted. A bunch of this stuff. There's a lot of it out there. A whole bunch of anti-gay stuff. You can imagine.
And opening one of these schools, well, it's shockingly easy.
We've actually at Carolina Forward, we've done some planning. We want to open our own school because all you need, you could do this. All you need to open a private school in the state of North Carolina is you need to have a structure. It has to pass a fire code test. It has to pass a building code test, and that's it.
So this could be your home if you wanted to?
Oh, it could absolutely be your home. It could be any structure that has a restroom in it and has a fire safety thing. You can open a private school and be eligible to receive voucher money and do pretty much whatever you want.
And you don't even need a minimum number of students?
No.
Wow.
No.
That's crazy.
You don't have to have anything. You can have church pastor's wife going to be your new teacher, and people don't understand just how loosey goosey that system. It is built for fraud.
Some of these private schools and homeschoolers use a curriculum called ABECA. The ABECA curriculum is taught from a Christian perspective. Science instructors are explicit about God's wonderful design. But students do learn the basic principles of chemistry, and they dissect frogs and, do the same thing that most secular students do. However, the curriculum has also been criticized for teaching that slavery was, quote, a blessing in disguise, for introducing enslaved Africans to Christianity. The Word of Faith Fellowship School uses ABECA, but even that wasn't restrictive enough for them. Here's the former Word of Faith student, Stephen Cordes again.
They would cut out certain parts of the learning in the curriculum that didn't fit their belief system. So I didn't know, like human reproduction was not taught. Human biology was not taught. Anything containing movies, works of art, plays, sports teams, anything that was, quote, of the world, was crossed out, and we'd get in trouble and get kicked out for reading sentences in our books that we weren't supposed to read. If you're going through a paragraph and you're reading and you're doing I don't know, I haven't thought about this stuff in so long, but comma rules or something, and you're going through and you're reading sentences, and then all of a sudden the next sentence is something bad that they don't want you to read. They say stop, and then then they're like, oh, did anybody read it? And then some of us were honest and be like, yeah, we read it, and they'd be like, all right, get out of class, So it was just stressful. I don't know how to describe it. That was normal every day for me. Yeah. But it was now that I realize that the world is not like that, it's just what the heck was I even living in?
Meanwhile, the money legally being funneled to schools like the Word of Faith Fellowship is coming from somewhere, and that somewhere is public schools.
Well, in North Carolina, there wasn't much money there in the first place to disappear, but things have gotten, even worse since the voucher program was established. So in North Carolina, we rank dead last in the nation for school funding effort.
And when a student leaves the public school system, the school loses money. But the cost of running the school still remains the same. So let's just say that they lose $10,000 per student. But that $10,000 is meant to cover fixed costs like, running the building, your central office staff. That means that the price to run the school stays the same, but the cost to teach that student goes up. And what ends up happening is that teachers are laid off and schools eventually have to close. In Florida, Texas, Arizona, some schools have closed largely due to losing money to private school vouchers. Here's Blair Reeves again with Carolina Forward.
We live in a state where teacher pay is one of the lowest in the country.
Close to the bottom of the nation, and that's a political choice. That's not a financial necessity. We're about to spend. We spent $500 million on school vouchers. We gave another $500 million to this venture capital fund or whatever. They spend money on completely insane stuff. We don't have to do that. We can spend more money on the teachers.
And who's getting hurt the most? Here's Chris Nordstrom with the North Carolina Justice Center.
It tends to be the rural schools. Public schools, in our rural counties, in many counties across the state, the school system is the biggest employer. The rural schools are also, compared to the urban school districts, more reliant on state funding.
I've seen the map, and most of the areas of the state receiving these private school vouchers are in urban areas like Raleigh and Charlotte, where wealthy families live. It just doesn't make sense.
And so what this really is a transfer of wealth from working class North Carolinians to disproportionately wealthy families across the state.
People who could afford it and people that were going to go to private school anyway.
Yeah, so over 20% of the new vouchers last year, now that we're in this uncapped situation, went to families who make the equivalent of over $250,000 a year for a family of four.
I asked Chris Nordstrom whether the program was ever really designed to help low-income families.
It was sold that way, but it was designed to do what it's doing.
Let's get back to the Word of Faith Fellowship School. a school that's legally funded by the North Carolina taxpayers. As I mentioned, I covered the Word of Faith Fellowship Church in depth in Season 3 of Pretend. And if you want the full story, go back and listen. But for this episode, I want to focus on the school because that's where the taxpayer money is going. In my series, we went in depth about the church, but we didn't focus enough time on the school itself. According to niche.com, the Word of Faith school has 77 students enrolled. And like I said earlier, according to the state's voucher data, they're receiving over $329,000 a year in 2024 and took another $200,000 for this school year. Stephen Cordes spent most of his childhood inside that school. And he says that by 7th grade, things started to fall apart.
7th grade, I was kicked out probably 50% of the year. 8th grade was most of the year. 9th grade was definitely most of the year. And then 10th grade was when I got sent to the lower building. So I was one of those guys that got sent down there as a freaking teenager.
So I was going to ask you about that. When you were sent to the lower building, was that because, why was that? And did it happen during school hours or did all this stuff happen after school?
Most of this stuff happened during school. Like if I made a comment in class and said something that was like, quote, prideful or whatever, I go down there that night. My dad drops me off. I bring like enough clothes for like a week. I get down there and I told him, I was like, I'm going back home in a week when they get back. And the dude just like belly laughed at me and he's like, you're not going anywhere. So I didn't see my parents for about 2.5 months. And a lot of the time I was down there, they told me I wasn't even allowed to leave the building.
2.5 months. A teenager with no contact with his parents. According to Stephen, this was considered part of the school's discipline program. Of course, the church has repeatedly denied detaining men in the lower building. In court filings, the Word of Faith acknowledges that child contact with peers, friends, and family may be limited during the in-school portion of discipleship. But they maintain that, quote, discipleship training does not involve isolation, unquote. But according to Stephen Cordes, isolation wasn't the only thing happening during school hours.
The girls were given like permission to slap us boys, like in class, like in the middle of class. We would get pretty violent when we were, quote, trying to get people's devils out. But like shaking, grabbing, throwing people down, rolling them across the floor, pushing on them so hard that they can't even breathe. All this crap happened in school hours. And this would take away from like academic time. You know what I mean? Like some days we would just like be on our faces all day, like literally like laying on our faces in the carpet, trying to cry out to God. You know what I mean? And like, so that I'm sure that's probably what you're interested in is like, teaching is not always happening. It's not always, in fact, it's more not happening than it is happening. Like, but then they'll change it up and they'll do something different with the next generation so that they'll come back and say, no, they're lying. That's not what we did.
North Carolina law does permit schools to use reasonable force in certain circumstances to stop a disturbance, act in self-defense, protect others, or restrain students. But the law is clear. Force is not permitted as a standard form of punishment or a disciplinary measure. If true, what Stephen Cordes describes is not behavioral intervention. It's religiously motivated physical violence against children, happening during school hours, funded by North Carolina taxpayers. Stephen believes that he got a good education at the Word of Faith, but we don't know that. We don't know if his teachers had any qualifications, because according to the state, the teachers don't even need to have any qualifications. When we come back, a reporter in Charlotte goes looking for a school that's collecting tens of thousands of dollars in state voucher money. She checks one address, nothing, then another, nothing, then another, and another. 7 addresses later, she finally finds the school. This episode is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one website platform for building your online presence and getting your work out into the world. So here's the thing. I've been podcasting for 8 years now, and one lesson that I've learned the hard way is that you need a home base, somewhere that's yours, not just a social profile that could disappear tomorrow and get buried with the algorithm change. Squarespace is how I think about that. You grab your domain, your name, your show, whatever you want to claim, and then you build around it. Their templates are actually good looking, and you don't need to know how to code. There's a thing called Blueprint AI that walks you through the design process, and you can just pick a template and start dragging stuff around until it feels just right. The other side that I appreciate is the services side. If you do any kind of consulting, coaching events, whatever, you can showcase what you offer, book appointments, send invoices, and get paid all from the same place. You don't have to Frankenstein set up 6 different apps that barely talk to each other. And if you have content that you want to monetize, video, courses, members only stuff, you can gate it behind a paywall and charge a subscription or a one-time fee. It's all built in. So check out squarespace.com/pretend for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use promo code PRETEND to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Again, that's squarespace.com/pretend. Use promo code PRETEND.
This episode is brought to you by Greenlight. You can't solve every case for your kids, but with Greenlight, they'll have the instincts and money skills to stay out of trouble. With a Greenlight debit card and money app, parents can monitor spending and teach financial responsibility. Educate your kids as they grow, from earning allowance and tracking chores to learning how to save and invest. Start your risk-free Greenlight trial today at greenlight.com/Spotify.
Andos Helms spent 22 years as an education reporter. She covered school boards, test scores, bond referendums, the works, right? But one thing she's never done.
This was the first time I ever had to figure out if a school existed, and if so, where it was, because usually a building with students in it is kind of an easy thing to find. So
it started with Chris Nordstrom's data with the North Carolina Justice Center. He had flagged 62 instances of discrepancies in the voucher program. Schools that were reporting fewer students than they had vouchers.
There were 2 schools that it was just grossly different.
But it was the second school that caught Anne's attention. A school right in her coverage area in Charlotte.
So here's this other one right here in Charlotte, listed as having 13 students and 22 scholarship recipients. That was $92,400 that year, which is, peanuts in the state budget, but it's not peanuts. You don't want to, hand out $92,000 without knowing what's going on.
Anne went to the school's website. It was bare bones, no location listed, no tuition information, no faculty, no links to enroll, nada.
The head of school was listed as Phoenicia Cowan. I called the number. It did not say you have reached Teaching Achieving Students Academy. It was a personal voicemail. And I got to the end of the message and it said this voicemail is full. So I couldn't leave a voicemail.
So Anne did what reporters do, and she went looking.
I'm looking at this website and it doesn't have a location. So I looked at the paperwork and there were 2 addresses listed. And so the first one that I went to was a building that I pulled up and I thought, oh, I recognize this. This used to be a public pre-kindergarten. It looks vacant. There's no sign for Teaching Achieving Students Academy. The other was just a duplex. No sign again saying it was a school or anything. I just figured that's a mailing address. The address led me to kind of a building at the back of the campus. And not surprisingly, the staff there came out and were like, hello, who are you and why are you wandering around our campus? And I said, call your director. She knows me. I've got this address. It's your gymnasium or whatever. And she just burst out laughing. She was like, no, we've had that building for 14 years. This school has not been using our space in that amount of time. And she pretty much came out and said, I think it's a scam. If they're saying they're located at my campus, no, that's not true.
So Anne kept digging. She found that the school's operator was going by another name, Phoenicia Locke. And she found the Facebook page listing yet another address. Then she found arrest records for Phoenicia Locke. And what was the charge in that arrest? Smuggling drugs into a jail.
And I asked the state about the charge. I said, is this a concern? Because among the very few requirements for getting this money is that your head of school has to have a background check. And they said, well, actually, the person that we backgrounded was not Phoenicia Cowan Locke. They said, well, no, the person who's listed as the top person at the school is Jennifer Lewis. And we did a background check on her and she's clear. To this day, I don't know exactly what Jennifer Lewis's role is there. I went back to both the school and the state and said, look, 7 different addresses. None of them have a school that I can find. This looks like something is really wrong. And to the state, I said, can you look into this?
And what did the state say about all this when you approached them?
Basically what they were saying, it was the two agencies pointing fingers at each other. You know, the private school agency that lists these said she has submitted the paperwork. She has submitted paperwork for this address in Davidson. She passed the fire inspection. Jennifer Lewis has passed the background check.
Right.
They basically said, look, we got our paperwork. And so then the voucher agency said, we rely on this other agency, which has a statutory responsibility to ensure a school's location meets its requirements. But she basically said, we're going to keep reviewing the information. The state, if they were investigating, were doing a very backwards investigation.
Finally, after all of this, Anne got another address. A shopping center in Harrisburg, North Carolina.
And it was a shopping center, and it had a kind of a little storefront church. It was this church, no sign for a school or anything. At that point, I had my, mic on because I wanted to get audio of myself knocking at the door and not getting an answer or whatever.
Right.
Push the door open. It's unlocked. I walk in. I'm still not seeing anything. Still got my mic on because I'm thinking somebody from the church is either going to say, yeah, it's here, or no, it's not. Came to another door, pushed it open, and lo and behold, there is a table full of students working very quietly. And I had seen enough photos at this point of Phoenicia to say, wow, that's her. What in the world? Wow, I'm Ann Doss Helms. You're here. I found you.
Here's a clip from Ann Doss Helms' story on WFAE, Charlotte's NPR station.
You're Miss Phoenicia, right?
Yeah,
I'm Ann Doss Helms. I've been looking for your school for ages.
Well, we're here. Come on out.
So you have a location with actual students?
Yeah, we've always had that, but my kids are learning right now.
I know. She said she didn't know why I had not found her school at the other locations.
And I don't know what your motive was behind it, but we were here. We've been everywhere we said we've been, but this is unacceptable. My kids are in the middle of learning.
Anne found a handful of students, maybe 10, sitting around a conference table. Not a traditional school setting, but nothing that looked like a typical education setting. So I asked Anne to check on the school's current status before our interview.
She is still receiving vouchers. She received about $84,000 worth last school year. She's gotten about $50,000 worth for the first semester of this year. The address is still listed as that Harrisburg address, the storefront church.
A school that a reporter spent months trying to locate. A school that's listed on 7 addresses. A school run by someone arrested for smuggling drugs into a jail. And the state of North Carolina is still writing those checks.
I do not think that this little school is typical. I don't think most of the money is just going to fraud or abuse. I think some are probably getting a great option. Some are probably just getting something that, meets their parents' religious needs. And to me, if you support that program, you should want the oversight. You should want to make sure that every dollar is going to what you consider to be a good cause, not to something else.
The point is, we now have multiple schools getting voucher monies for students who are not attending those schools. Is it fraud? I don't know.
You cannot just, as a school, just hand in a sheet that says, I've got 6 voucher students, give me the money. The parents have to apply.
Right. That's what I don't understand.
So somebody filed applications for these students.
Yeah.
I am inclined to think it is the parents. Theoretically, it might be possible for somebody to fabricate applications.
Or could it be something like, you get parents to enroll, but then they're also going to public school?
See, that was my thought also. And this is speculation because I don't know this for sure. But my personal theory is that she has all along been providing some kind of service to these kids. Tutoring, enrichment, after school, I don't know. And I could easily see how you could talk to parents whose kids need extra help and say, if you fill in this form, you'll be able to get this free help.
Yeah.
Either the voucher agency should be able to check the database of applicants against public school records. And if we're paying for you to go to a private school and you're also enrolled in a public school, whoop, that's a red flag right there. All of this responsibility lands on the General Assembly.
Yeah. It seems like they rolled out the money before they rolled out a plan, right?
I think their plan was to hand out the money.
The most frustrating part, after all this reporting, after Chris Nordstrom flagged the data, after Ann Doss Helm tracked down the schools, the state's response was not to increase the oversight, It was to make the data harder to find.
Since I put out that data, the state agency that used to collect private school enrollment figures stopped publishing them. And the State Education Assistance Authority that oversees the voucher program stopped putting out their data on the number of vouchers going to each school.
They took off those databases that he had used and that any of us could go to. We didn't make the schools more accountable. We made it harder for you to ask questions about them.
So here's what we know. The North Carolina voucher program has ballooned from this small program meant for low-income families into this $500 million system that subsidizes private education for even the wealthy. 87% of new voucher money goes to families who are already paying for private schools. There are no standardized test requirements for private schools, no curriculum requirements, no teacher qualification requirements. The only thing you need to open a school is a building that passes a fire inspection. When a researcher flags the discrepancy in the data, the state didn't seem to investigate. They just made the data disappear. And when the reporter found a school using 7 different addresses, a school run by someone with a criminal record, the school keeps getting funded. Meanwhile, North Carolina ranks dead last in the nation for school funding. School teachers are paid near the bottom nationally, and under the state constitution, students have a right to attend decent schools. And the courts have found that the state is failing to meet that.
It's a black box.
Right.
I mean, money goes in, but nothing comes out, right?
Right.
And inside that black box, schools like the Word of Faith Fellowship, where a teenager says that he was sent to live in a building for 2.5 months with no contact with his family, where students have claimed being physically assaulted during school hours in the name of deliverance, where the curriculum is censored and the teachers are not required to meet the state's qualifications. The voucher program has about 105,000 students across the state. Most of them are probably fine. Some students might even be getting a great education. But without that oversight, without transparency, without accountability, we have no way of knowing. And the people who should be asking the questions, well, they're making it harder to ask.
Voucher programs in general, they're wildly unpopular. Every time a state has put a voucher program on the ballot, and this is not just in blue states, this is in red states like Kentucky, Tennessee, Texas, voters have rejected that, and often led by families and politicians from rural areas, conservative parts of the state, because they realize the threat that vouchers have to their communities.
This was another installment of my State of Corruption series. I hope you enjoyed it. Education is super important to me. I really believe that if you fund education, pay teachers better, have a smarter population, everyone benefits. But if we rob students of quality schools, garbage in, garbage out. If you want to hear more of my conversation with Andos Helms, Blair Reeves, and Stephen Cordes and Chris Nordstrom, I will be posting extended interviews on Patreon and Pretend Plus on Apple Podcasts. I also would love to know your thoughts on this. I recently looked at my analytics and discovered that 4 out of the top 10 cities who listen to this podcast are international. My 2 top cities are Sydney and Melbourne in Australia. Isn't that wild? They're probably listening to this madness and wondering, WTF, mate? But I hope you still enjoyed this episode. Let me know if any of this madness is happening on your side of the world. That being said, I should probably do more Australian-focused stories. So my Aussie friends, if you have a story idea, send it my way. Javier@pretendradio.org. Quick update on the Word of Faith Fellowship. Remember the story of Matthew Fenner, a former Word of Faith Fellowship member who says that the district attorney in Rutherford County, Ted Bell, had intentionally delayed the trial? Well, an independent counsel was appointed to investigate to see if the DA, Ted Bell, was abusing his powers. A judge assigned an independent investigator to look to see if there was any mishandling of the case, and the independent investigator said that he found no proof of special treatment between Bell and the Word of Faith Fellowship Church. Ted Bell showed the independent investigator a text message from Jane Welly herself where she wanted to talk to Ted Bell about the case, and he refused. Of course, I'll be following the story. If anything new happens, if the trial date actually gets scheduled, I will let you know. So stay tuned for that. All right, guys, I'll talk to you soon. I have tons of great stories recorded, like they're ready to go, but I haven't had enough time to actually put them together. So I might take a week or two off. I'm going to play you some of my old favorite episodes. Lots and lots of exciting stuff. So stay tuned for that. All right, take care. Bye.